listening is a big part of finding solutions, and also it's a big part of healing.
There's no silver bullet in this. You have to really look at the ecosystem and try to make sure that you're addressing all parts of it as best you can.
This is a really critical time period, and it's really important to make sure that we are giving children those opportunities for a strong foundation.
Sadly, we've seen a lot of spikes. I think inflation is just such a stress for our communities, and we've also seen increases in mental health, substance abuse, domestic violence, and sadly, family violence. Families do have a vast variety of needs, but what we're seeing the most out of is the cost and the financial stress that families are facing.
I always think there's a role for everyone to play, and sometimes people think, well, I don't have money, I can't contribute, I can't volunteer, but I think there's so many things that children and families need, especially now with the economy, with a lot of stressors.
There's a lot of one-on-one instances, a lot of specific situations, and that has to be dealt with. But we also have to look at trends so that we can be more preventative, try to change the trajectory.
We did a study back in 2023 on food insecurity in Hawaii, and what that study showed was that about 30% of Hawaii's population was food insecure. It also showed that about 29% of households with at least one or more children were food insecure.
Here you go.
At the most extreme, about 6% of kids in our community went an entire day without food.
Food insecurity is stress for families. It is stress for any kind of single parent, double parent, multi-generational home.
Hawaii has one of the worst housing crises in the whole nation.
What our families' needs are across the communities. And so what are the needs of mental health, of substance abuse? All these things exacerbate child abuse and prevention.
So many people have second and in some cases third jobs, families are split. How do you balance all of that?
We felt we had to take some action because a lot of this is going to take a long time to help people get better. By putting Malama Working Group together, what it did was it empowered us and have them go into people's lives and to understand where they're coming from culturally, what they're struggling with in their lives, hear directly from families.
What this working group is a network of people coming together to really give voice to their lived experience within the child welfare system. And we created a task force that actually took these recommendations to establish a more trauma-informed child welfare system, one that works closely with the community, works closely with those with lived experience, and to really lend their voices to the solutions that child welfare can come up with on how to be a better partnership with our community.
Well, we definitely want to break the cycle because we do know that there are families that have experienced trauma that then pass on that cycle of trauma. If you see someone in need, don't wait until they're struggling and have to ask for help because there's so many resources out there to help our families in need.
Hale Kipa is really trying to get our young people connected to their culture here. And so we thought, wouldn't it be great to have an outdoor meeting space? We thought, why not have the young people learn how to build a hale, right? Using traditional practices. We know, statistics show and studies show that when a young person is connected to their culture, there's a sense of pride, their identity. I mean, it really is true. It takes all of us. It takes a village, right? It takes a kauhale. It takes a ahupua'a to raise our children.
Sometimes you don't even think it's a job. It's more of, it's everybody. It's a kako thing and it's a love. I wake up and I'm just like, I get to be that for somebody because I would want somebody to be that for me. I am just like them. I would stand in line. I don't know where my next grocery is going to come from. I'm passing this all out to you, but when I go home, my kids are still hungry. They want to know where the snacks are. So to be that and to know that I'm in that same situation, you stand in line, you have to put your walls down. You have to, people have to humble themselves to stand up and stand in line and wait and be like, I need the help. Or sometimes you might not need the help, it's just the extra. It's the lift up. We live paycheck by paycheck.
The work that we do, we feel is really important. We know that the lack of access to food is just one additional stressor that the families have. It's not the main reason. There are a lot of factors that feed into that. I mean, it really links to poverty, people not having enough access to income to afford to live a good life, to afford nutritious food, and oftentimes they're having to make impossible decisions between a basic necessity or even transportation, medication, paying their rent, paying their utilities, and food.
Here you go, kiddo. Don't forget your pineapple, okay? This distribution is more than just a food distribution. It's actually a partnership for the whole community. Here you go. I've been teaching here for many, many years. So this is like my community. And so to me, a lot of us who are still here, we're here because we care about the kids, we care about the community. And if the situation was reversed, I always look at it this way. If I was the parent or the child, I would want somebody to be looking out for my family. Here you go, kiddos. Pineapple, over there. I think it's really important for the children and for the community.
We never say no, we never limit the amount. You want to take 5 bags, you can carry 5 bags, you can take, I don't know your house situation at home. I don't know how it is, I can't judge you. I'm just going to give you, I'm going to provide it for you so you can take it home.
If we are going to provide 100% free meals, which I think quite a bit of people support, we want to make sure we're buying local. So if we're buying local, we're also providing a boost to our economy with more local jobs, more local purchases, more GET spending, more income tax, more regional economic development, because when you're talking about agriculture, it's really a lot of rural communities.
It's important. It starts with nourishment, definitely. And so it's really whatever we can do to reach the child in any way, whether it's food, medical services, counseling, because they also help us out with that. So we have an array of services.
We are very supportive of the food bank, for example, because once again, just maybe if people have a couple $100s of extra leeway because they have enough food, then they won't be worried about the negative effects on their children when they're away or, if they're hungry.
They're grateful, they're not shamed, they're just like, all they see is it's food, it's here. Every Thursday, I can come and there's gonna be snacks, there's gonna be a bag, and there's gonna be a fruit, there's gonna be some kind of produce. The produce is the highlight. The pineapple is top 3. They love the pineapple. Really important to be a department that is dependable, that they can go out on, not only families, but I can be like today on Thursday, make sure you pick up your bag. And that's one less to go to the grocery store. And as a parent, we obviously want the healthy, but in reality, it is so much stress to choose healthy reality. What's my paycheck? What's my budget? What's on sale? Why do we have to Why is it come that we have to shop like that every single day and we have to think like that? Why can't we just buy what's good for our kids?
We lock our arms together here in Hawaii. We take care of our own, and we ask humbly people when they can to support vulnerable families.
The magic touch or the magic answer is that. We have to think like that. Imagine that's your child in the classroom. Imagine that's my child picking up that package. I want my child to be respected, to be treasured, and to make a difference. So all of the things that we do, the little things, they all add up, and it tells them that they're important.
Most of our brain development happens more in the first 5 years than it does throughout the rest of our lifespan. So this is a really critical time period, and it's really important to make sure that we are giving children those opportunities for a strong foundation through positive, nurturing, responsive relationships with trusted adults. The earlier families can learn how to build those relationships with kids and sustain them, the better for the family and the kid. And really promoting those healthy dynamics that we know contribute to success. And it's a two-way street. I think a lot of people don't realize that when you can foster more positive relationships with children, it actually positively alters the adult's brain too. So adults benefit just as much from positive nurturing reactions with children as children do.
We're also funding quite a bit of healthcare needs within the Department of Education. Every school used to have a health aide. That's not the case anymore. So in this year's budget, there's quite a bit for more health services at schools. You know, we're putting in more money so that local doctors or nurses can get their loans paid for if they can continue to practice in Hawaii.
Anything we can do on an individual level is helpful, but there's tons of resources. So as soon as you might know that you're pregnant, reaching out to your OBGYN, hospitals, getting as many resources as you can, contacting child care facilities to get on wait lists, getting as much resources as you can from them, and just making sure that you're building a solid support system, not just for your kids, but for yourself as well. You know, our families are really struggling and we need to do something about it, right? That this is a moment in time where we literally and figuratively have to put our money where our mouth is and to really address the high costs of just living here, and the fact that so many of our families are ALICE families, so asset limited income constrained but employed, who don't have disposable income, right? So any hit to their budget is a big hit. Anytime you are consistently flooded with stress hormones, that causes very toxic, detrimental effects. Kids learn these relational patterns and how to cope very early, and it's very deeply seated, so it's really difficult to basically reprogram yourself, right, when you have these traumatic experiences. And so a lot of efforts have been happening lately on building awareness about ACEs and the buffers too, right? It's really about building resiliency for both children and family members so that even if stressful things happen, we can respond to them in a supportive, nurturing way.
Well, I think the biggest difference is that Hawaii has one of the worst housing crises in the whole nation. Whenever I share the statistics about housing, costs, and availability in Hawaii with my colleagues on the mainland, you know, they're shocked to learn how dire the picture is here for a lot of families. You know, the research shows that for every 100 low-income households in Hawaii, there are only about 40 housing units that are available and affordable to them. And since housing is the biggest cost for most people, especially families, the most recent ALICE report from Aloha United Way found that half of families with children are not making ends meet. And again, the biggest driver of that in their household budget is typically housing. So without being able to afford housing, number one, you don't have a stable foundation with which to build the rest of your life, but then it's hard to afford the rest of the essentials that you need as well, whether that's food, medicine, transportation, school supplies, all the other things that people need.
Well, it's both sides, right? We still have to provide services because there are people in immediate need that need help. So we really need to focus on affordable housing, especially along the state lands, along the rail line. You know, we're pushing transit-oriented development. If we can build more affordable housing and housing along the rail line. That could also mean less expenses on having to deal with car insurance or a car payment, because now you can really rely on public transportation. Government also has to ensure that it provides other services like libraries and culture and arts all around parks, all around the rail line too, so that we can create community, not just housing.
Just taking down the pressure is helpful. And also, we want families to be reunited. A lot of families move to the mainland, and by building more houses, by making more rentals available, having, aunties and uncles here, it really goes a long way, because the cliche of it takes a village is real, but if your village is halfway across on the mainland, you just don't have that support for your kids.
If families are headed in a situation where their housing situation is reaching a crisis, we want to try to intervene and prevent them from experiencing homelessness and losing their housing, because that just adds a whole other layer of stress and trauma and can create its own adverse childhood experiences, just through the experience of homelessness alone.
It's really providing safe communities for our children, for our neighbors, for our families, so that we don't have to get to a place where the struggle or the desperation comes to a head.
Lawmakers and policymakers need to hear the voices of those who are most directly impacted by issues to really be able to understand what the issues are, and also learn from these communities about what they think the solutions should be for their own challenges. That's why I feel it's so urgent, is because when we address homelessness and housing for young children and their families, we're not just helping them afford their housing today, but we're potentially changing the trajectory of the whole next generation.
The community plays such a significant role, because when there's a concern about a child's safety, I know sometimes there's concern about, well, I'm not sure if something has happened. Even if you're not sure, even if you just suspect that there's a concern about a child in your neighborhood, to call the hotline. And so what we're saying is, it's not just those of us that are professionals that are responding, but it's the entire community.
We provide security, safety, comfort to the children who are interviewed at the Children's Justice Center of Oahu. And we, it starts from the moment that they come through the center doors. And, when they come for their interviews, a lot of the children, they have different emotions. And so one of the feelings that we want them to have is security, comfort.
I do what I do because these keiki that are often abused or neglected, which is abuse, are just like me, right? They grew up here in Hawaii, they're my people, and I have children just like them. And I would hope that somebody like me would step in to be an advocate and make sure this kind of thing doesn't happen to children that grew up just like me or grew up like my kids.
When you're talking about stresses, it's difficult to pinpoint one thing. It's very much dependent on the family themselves and what they've gone through already as a family.
So often what you find is that these abuses occur because of the environment that's been set up. And so it's important for all the agencies to work together, because you find that a lot of these children are falling through the gaps in the system. And the gaps occur when the agencies aren't communicating with each other. It's really fulfilling. And this is why I do what I do. It's important for me to help the community, to help children and those who can't speak out for themselves.
It's about people who are struggling with everyday things, right? It's about the cost of living. It's about having multiple jobs and still having to raise your children, to pick them up on time, to provide everything that you want to provide for your kids, and having to deal with that stress. And if they feel like they're alone, it gets desperate. But if we can pull together as a community, I think that's the most important thing.
Each family, in my experience, is different. There are so many different stressors. You know, it could be financial stressors, it could be relationship stressors, it could be, you know, stressors in the home, the condition of the home and their living situation. And it could also be family history, how parents were raised, you know. So there's so many different situations and so many things that can go into effect that could possibly cause this. It's no one thing. I would say that there's more resources available to people than I think people are really aware of, you know, and it's important for people just to make a call, you know, go on the internet and seek out these sources.
Our mission is to help these children in their healing journey. And part of that is providing them with the resources or the items that they feel that they need to get their voice back.
My children could have been here at any given moment. They could have been in our shelters. They could have been on the streets, right? And it was those people and those resources that helped me to be the parent that I am today. And if I can offer that to other parents and other families, then I should be doing that.
What I love about Child and Family Service is we strengthen the entire family. And I think if you're focused in on one social aspect or one family member, it's more likely families are going to need to come back into care. But when you're looking at the family unit, because all of us need safe and strong families to thrive.
It's about providing all of those support systems, you know, and providing a safety net and providing them skills. It all goes together.
We want every family in Hawaii to succeed well enough to care for their whole ohana. So we're headed that way, but it's a process. And I hope that people will see this and see lots of examples of organizations that are available. If you ask the right questions, you will be introduced to these opportunities.